My husband walked into my mother's funeral with another woman on his arm and introduced her to me by the casket. Robert leaned in, his hand on the small of her back, and said her name like it was nothing. "This is Caroline. She works with me at the bank." I shook her hand. I smiled. I thanked her for coming, and then I went and stood by my mother's body, and I counted to 10 in my head before I let myself breathe. What Robert did not know was that I had been waiting for this woman for 2 years. I knew her name before he said it. I knew the hotel. I knew the dates. I knew exactly how much of our retirement was sitting in an account she had opened the previous March. I am Diane. I am 62 years old. I am a hospice nurse, which means I have spent 38 years watching people die with more dignity than my husband had in him on a Tuesday afternoon. I had buried my mother that morning. By Friday of the following week, I would bury my marriage. And the only person in that funeral home who knew what was coming was me. Before I tell you what my 11-year-old grandniece whispered into my sleeve at the reception, you need to know one thing. The safe in our bedroom had 2 locks on it. Only one of them was the lock Robert thought it was. I had nursed my mother in my own house for 18 months, pancreatic cancer, stage 4 when they found it. She lived with me in the back bedroom because no nursing home was going to do for her what I would do for her. Robert was a regional vice president at the bank. He told me he was traveling for audits. He told me he was sorry he could not be home more. He told me he loved me and he would make it up to me when she was gone. He said it like he was reading off a piece of paper. My mother died on a Sunday morning in early October. I was holding her hand. Robert was in Phoenix, he said. He flew home that night. He brought me flowers from the airport gift shop. The first thing he said when he walked through the door was about the dog. "Did you feed her, Diane?" I looked at him. My mother had been dead for 9 hours. I had not slept. I had not eaten. The dog was at my sister's house and had been for 3 days. I said, "Yes, Robert." I fed her. He nodded. He put the flowers on the counter. He went upstairs to shower. That was the first thing I noticed. He did not ask me how I was. He did not ask about her last words. He did not ask if I had cried. He asked about the dog. You probably already know the kind of man I mean. The funeral was on a Thursday. I had picked the dress myself, navy blue, because my mother always said black was for strangers. I stood in the receiving line for an hour and a half. Robert stood next to me. He shook hands. He nodded at the right moments. He kept checking his phone. Around the 3rd song, a woman walked in alone. Late 40s, navy dress, pearl earrings. She sat 3 rows behind me, on the aisle, by herself. I did not turn around. I felt her there the way you feel a draft. At the reception, Robert brought her over to me. His hand was on her back. Not her shoulder, her back. Low. "Diane, this is Caroline. She works with me at the bank. She wanted to pay her respects." Caroline smiled. She had a charm bracelet on her wrist. Silver, with 4 little charms. I said, "Thank you for coming, Caroline. That was very kind." She said, "Your mother sounds like she was a wonderful woman." She had never met my mother. She did not even know her name. I smiled again. I walked away. I went to the bathroom and I washed my hands for 2 full minutes because if I did not do something with my hands, I was going to scream into the sink. When I came out, my grandniece Maddie was waiting for me. 11 years old, pigtails, a juice box in her hand. She tugged my sleeve. "Aunt Diane, why does Grandpa Rob's friend have the same bracelet as the lady in his picture?" I said, "What picture, sweetheart?" She said, "The one on his desk at his work. Mommy took me there at Christmas. He showed us his computer. The lady in the picture was sitting on a boat and she had the same bracelet, the little starfish one." I bent down so my face was level with hers. I asked her, "Are you sure it was the same bracelet, Maddie?" She nodded. She was 11. She was sure. I told her thank you. I told her she was a very smart girl. I told her not to mention it to anyone else, not even her mother, because it was a grown-up surprise. She nodded again. She skipped away. I stood there in the middle of the reception room with a paper plate of food I had not touched. I counted 4 things about Caroline's purse from across the room: the clasp, the strap, the size, The color. It was the same purse from the hotel parking lot photo the investigator had given me 11 months earlier. That night, after everyone left, after Robert had 3 glasses of wine and went upstairs to sleep, I walked into our bedroom closet and I opened the safe. There were 2 locks on that safe. Robert thought there was only one. The combination he knew opened the top compartment, where we kept passports and the deed to the house. The combination he did not know opened the bottom compartment, where I kept the file. The file was 3 inches thick. I sat on the floor of the closet in my funeral dress, and I opened it. Photographs, hotel records, credit card statements, a bank document showing $180,000 moved out of our joint retirement account in 3 transfers over 14 months. The receiving account was in Caroline's name. The signature on the transfer request was Robert's. Before I tell you what I did the next morning, I need you to understand something. If you have ever sat in your own closet, on the floor, in the clothes you wore to bury your mother, holding a file you have been quietly building for 2 years, you already know what kind of quiet that is. Stay with me. I am almost there. 2 years earlier, I had found a hotel receipt in his coat pocket when I took it to the cleaner. The receipt was for a room in Cleveland. Robert had told me he was in Detroit that week. I did not say anything. I did not cry. I did not confront him. I went to my sister Patricia. Patricia is a paralegal. Patricia is also the only person on this earth who has ever told me the truth about Robert without me having to ask. She said, "Diane, you need an attorney, not a regular one who handles marital fraud." She gave me a name. The attorney's name was Linda Marsh. Linda was 67 years old, 5 feet tall, and had the calmest voice I had ever heard in a professional setting. I sat across from her in her office and I told her what I had found. Linda said, "Diane, here is what we are going to do. We are not going to do anything fast. We are going to do this right." She told me to hire an investigator. She gave me the name. She told me to open a separate bank account in my own name only. She told me to make copies of every financial document in the house. She told me to never let Robert know I was watching. For 2 years, I built the file. The investigator gave me a folder every quarter. Hotels, restaurants, a weekend in Charleston, photographs of Caroline, photographs of Robert with Caroline, the bracelet, the purse, the boat. I knew her name 18 months before he introduced her to me. The morning after my mother's funeral, I drove to Linda's office. I brought the file. I brought the new evidence from the funeral, which was a napkin Caroline had left on the table with a lipstick mark on it, and a hotel key card that had fallen out of Robert's jacket pocket when he hung it up. Linda looked at the key card. She said, "Diane, we are ready." I said, "File Monday." She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "File Monday morning." At his office. In front of his assistant. In front of the regional manager. Linda smiled. It was the first time I had ever seen her smile. She said, "Diane, sweetheart, it will be my pleasure." That was the only time anyone called me sweetheart in a way that did not make my skin crawl. Caroline used the word honey. I had not told you that yet. Every time the investigator had recorded her on the phone with Robert, she called him honey. "Honey, when are you coming? Honey, did she suspect anything? Honey, I miss you." The word honey, said Lowe. The way you say something cruel when you do not want to be overheard. I heard it on 3 separate recordings before I ever met her. By the time she shook my hand at the funeral, I knew the exact pitch of her voice when she said it. Monday morning, at 9:15, a process server walked into the lobby of Robert's bank. He asked the receptionist for Robert by name. He went up to the executive floor. He served the papers in the open area outside Robert's office, in front of 3 vice presidents, 2 assistants, and the regional manager. I was not there, Linda told me later. The regional manager's assistant called Linda's office that afternoon to confirm the documents had been received. She said off the record that Robert had sat down in his chair and not said anything for 11 minutes. 11 minutes of silence in an open office. By Tuesday morning, the bank had launched an internal review. By Wednesday, they had found the wire transfers. By Thursday, they had found 3 more transactions Robert had run through accounts he should not have had access to. By Friday afternoon, he was suspended. By the following Monday, the suspension was termination. I did not call him. I did not answer when he called me. I did not respond to his texts. Linda handled everything. 3 weeks in, Robert showed up at the house. I was in the kitchen. I had been waiting for this. He let himself in with his key. He stood in the doorway. Diane, we need to talk. I did not turn around. I was making tea. I said, Robert, the locks were changed on Tuesday. That key does not work on the back door. You came in the front because you knew. He said, Diane, please. I turned around. I had 3 things on the counter in front of me. A copy of the wire transfer authorization, a photograph from Charleston, and my mother's wedding ring, which I had taken out of her jewelry box that morning and put on my finger. I slid the wire transfer across the counter. I said, Robert, you moved $180,000 of our retirement into Caroline's account. The bank knows. The attorney knows. My sister knows. And now you know that I know. He looked at the paper. He did not pick it up. He said, Diane, I can explain. I slid the Charleston photograph next to the wire transfer. I said, this is from April. This is the weekend you told me you were at a conference in Atlanta. The hotel charged us for both rooms on our joint card. I have the statement. He did not say anything. He sat down at the kitchen table. He put his hands on his face. I picked up the 3rd thing. My mother's ring. I held it up so he could see it. I said, Robert, my mother told me on the day before she died that she always knew. She told me she was sorry she did not say something sooner. She told me to keep the house and the ring and to take my name back. He looked up. He said, Diane, please, Caroline is gone. She left me 2 weeks ago. I have nothing. I said, Robert, you have exactly what you earned. He sat at that table for another 20 minutes. He did not cry. He did not yell. He picked up his keys, slowly, and he walked out the front door. I heard the door close. I heard his car start. I heard him drive away. The kitchen went quiet. I sat at the table by myself and I drank my tea. It was the first time in 18 months I had sat in that kitchen and not been listening for my mother's voice from the back bedroom, and not been listening for Robert's car in the driveway. I was just sitting, just drinking tea. 5 people in our family stopped speaking to Robert by the end of that summer. His sister, his brother, his brother's wife, his mother who called me and apologized in a voice I had never heard her use before, and my grandniece Maddie, who told her mother that Grandpa Rob was not her grandpa anymore, because grandpas do not lie about ladies on boats. The divorce was finalized 8 months later. I kept the house, I kept the pension, I kept my mother's wedding ring, I kept the dog. I did not keep his last name. The judge looked at me on the day the papers were signed and said, Mrs. Hollister, is there anything you would like to add for the record? I said, Your Honor. My name is Diane Whitfield. That is my mother's name. I would like the record to show that I am taking it back. The judge nodded. She signed the paper. Robert was sitting at the table on the other side of the room. He did not look at me. His hand moved once, slowly, toward his own paperwork, and then stopped halfway. He pulled it back into his lap. His chair scraped a little when he shifted his weight. That was the sound I remember. The chair. I drove home that afternoon by myself. I parked in the driveway. I sat in the car for a minute before I went inside. Maddie had drawn a picture and taped it to the front door. It was a picture of me and my mother and the dog. There was no man in the picture. Maddie had written my new name across the top in green marker. Aunt Diane Whitfield. I stood on the porch and I looked at it for a long time. My mother used to say that a woman's name is the only thing she gets to take with her into the next room. I thought about that. I thought about her sitting in the back bedroom in the last week of her life, holding my hand, telling me she always knew. I thought about the file in the safe. I thought about the bracelet on Caroline's wrist and the way my grandniece had tugged my sleeve at the reception. I went inside. I took the picture off the door. I put it on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a starfish, which my mother had bought me on a trip to the coast when I was 9 years old, and which had been on that refrigerator for 53 years. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat at the kitchen table. The dog came over and put her head on my knee. The house was very quiet, not empty. Quiet. I said her name out loud, just to hear it. Diane Whitfield. The dog looked up at me. She wagged her tail once, then she put her head back down. I sat there until the tea went cold.